Hi everybody and welcome to today's video. My name is Matt and this is What Matters to Matt. On today's video, I'm really, honestly, very excited. I know I say that a lot, but today I get to give you my first impressions of the Adidas Boston 12. So honestly, there were just way too many reasons for me to go out and purchase the Boston 12, and we'll talk about that in a minute. First, we're going to go over some of the stats, then we'll get into why I bought the shoe, where do I think it fits into my shoe rotation, and finally, I took this straight out of the box and took it on a 25-kilometer long run. We'll get into my first impressions after that run, and lastly, we'll talk about whether I think this was actually worth my hard-earned money. All right, let's go over some of the stats and features of this shoe before we actually get into my thoughts after that first run. Now, it is 9.5 ounces in a US men's size 9, or for me, I am not wearing a size 9. I am wearing a US men's size 13, and for this, it comes in at a little bit over 11 ounces or 315 grams. Now that midsole, that heel to toe drop, you've got 38 millimeters in the heel and 31 millimeters in the forefoot for a 7 millimeter drop. Also, that midsole is made up out of a dual density midsole. This top layer that you see that really does kind of dip down in the front, so you get a lot more of it in the forefoot, is the Light Strike Pro, the same thing that you're going to find in the Adios Pro 3. And the bottom layer is Light Strike 2.0. That's a little bit more of an EVA midsole, and we're going to talk about how that might actually affect me a little bit more this winter when we get into my first impressions. And sandwiched in between those two layers of foam, you do have energy rods. Now, these are not carbon fiber energy rods like you are going to find on the Adios Pro 3. These are actually glass fiber rods. Means that they're still going to offer some rigidity and still going to offer a little bit of extra bounce and toe off, but they're not going to be quite as harsh as you'd find in the Adios Pro 3. The upper of this shoe is made up of an engineered mesh. And finally, the outsole, Continental rubber, gonna be great come this winter. Now, probably one of the most important parts in my mind to this video is why did I go out and purchase the Adidas Boston 12? Now, there are a few different reasons, and the first reason is actually the price. I was able to pick this up for $80 Canadian, which I think works out to roughly $60 American through the Adidas website. And that's one thing I want to say about Adidas in general is I find that quite often, if you pay close enough attention to their website and you want to snag yourself a deal, they're always running deals. Oftentimes, and this shoe is no different, they brought out some new colorways and they took some of the older colorways that they've had around for a while and marked them down, then offered additional coupons on top of that, and I was able to, again, snag this for $80. I think it was $95 after tax. It's absolutely ridiculous steal of a deal for a shoe that in Canadian starts at $190. And reason number two why I bought the Boston 12 is that I was a big fan of the Adios Pro 3. By the way, if you're not subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. Check out some of my other videos. Check out my May marathon video. In that video, I was actually running in the Adidas Adios Pro 3s. I broke my PR by 33 minutes in the marathon, so I was super pleased with that shoe. I had a little bit of an issue with the upper, and we'll talk about the upper on this shoe in a couple of minutes, but overall, I was just such a big fan of that, and to know that there was as much Light Strike Pro down here in the forefoot as there was in this shoe, and to know that they were using energy rods, and to know that we were getting that Continental rubber, and to know just how much I got the impression that this was such a good training companion to the Adios Pro 3. I was really excited to eventually get it on my feet. And reason number three, and again, if you've been watching my videos, it's no secret that I am a pretty big fan of Saucony. I've had a number of different Saucony shoes, the Endorphin series, Endorphin Speed 1, 2, and 3. I've ran a couple of pairs of Triumph shoes into the ground. I've ran a couple of different rides into the ground, and I've just been a big fan of Sauconys. But one of the things that I find, especially with the Endorphin Speeds, is that the 3 had gotten really close for me to be a really good daily trainer, but I found this a little bit too soft and maybe still a little bit unstable when I'm just plodding along. I'm tired, I want to do a little bit of a recovery run or an easy run, and I want to use a daily trainer. I like to use the Endorphin Speed for that, but I find it a little bit less stable. And with this blend of midsoles between the Light Strike Pro and the firmer EVA underneath, I was hoping that that combination would give me a little bit more of a firmer ride that would offer a little bit more stability than what I was finding in the Endorphin Speed 3. So that's one of the other reasons why I ended up buying the Adidas Boston 12. Lastly, and I mentioned it before, is that Continental rubber. Honestly, I live up here in Canada and we can have some pretty crazy winters. And what that means is we've got lots of snow, ice, slush, all sorts of things going on. And when I try to compare this to the Endorphin Speed 3, really, I'll probably do a separate video where I do more of a comparison between the two. But the Continental rubber, there's not a lot of shoes, in my opinion, that have a better outsole than Adidas. Puma, you can make a case for Puma and their Puma grip. But overall, I was just really excited to have a shoe with such good grip that I could run those roads, those Canadian roads, this winter. Let's talk about the run that I went on yesterday with this shoe. It was my first time running in the Boston 12, and I took it right out of the box, and I took it on a 25-kilometer long run. Now, 25 kilometers isn't really that long, but I am in a base building phase, and that is the longest run that I've done in a little while. So I was curious about a couple of different things. One, what would it be like running a slow long run, because it was just meant to be a slow long run that I had on the plan? What would it be like if I picked up the pace for a couple of different kilometers, running at more of a threshold pace? What would it be like if I threw some strides in at the end of the run? And ultimately, how was I going to feel the next day after doing that longer run in a brand new shoe? All right, so let's talk about the upper for just a second on this, and I'll give you my first impressions. I'm going to do a whole review on this shoe after I probably get about 100 miles into it. But first off, the upper. The upper with Adidas shoes, for some reason, a lot of people seem to have a lot of issues with their uppers. And for me, quite frankly, I tend to not have issues with uppers, but Adidas have never quite fit me 100%. This is a men's size 13. I do find that it is true to size, but that does come with a couple of small things to keep in mind. First off, true to size in a men's size 13 for me in the shoe does mean that it runs just a touch long in the toe box. There is plenty of room up here in the forefoot for me. The midfoot does feel quite snug, and that's good because back here in the heel, there's not a whole lot of padding, there's not a whole lot going on, and some people do complain about heel slip, both in this shoe and the Adios Pro 3. And for me, if I can get a really good midfoot lockdown, which I can in this shoe because of just how it kind of narrows off quite a bit, I don't have a high volume foot, but I'm able to get a good lockdown in the midfoot. I worry a little bit less about my forefoot. I actually like lots of extra space up there for me to move my feet. I don't want to ever risk a shoe being too small. So I like having the room that I have in the forefoot of the shoe. I like the snugness of the midsole. And I had no problems in that, no blisters, no hot spots, nothing in the heel of this shoe yesterday. I didn't really notice that it was moving around too much. Not really any heel slip. I think for some people, just not having the padding, and I don't know if I can show this here, if it'll lock on it. There's no padding back here, and there's these little bumpers on the sides. And I think for some people, having that no padding in the back of the heel kind of does make it feel like it's a little bit loose and a little bit slippy. But honestly, midfoot lockdown is so good for me in this shoe that I have no problem with that at all. Some people also said that the lacing system was a little bit cute here, the way they did this. And also that there's very, very little padding on the tongue of this shoe. And they got a little bit of lace bite, but I didn't have any of those problems at all. And in fact, the only problem that I did have was that when I was picking out the pace and I got close to threshold pace for me, which was around 420 per kilometer, the lace did come undone on one of the shoes and I had to stop and tie that up. Gave myself a little break actually to do that. So that was my only concern. I did use the runner's loops here, the runner's knot in the back. So I made sure that I had a good lockdown, but overall, really no real concerns with the upper for me. Felt really, really good. The midsole on that run was really where the magic happened and didn't happen. There are a couple of things that went on with this midsole, and I find this can happen with a lot of dual density midsoles. First of all, having that dual density, having that EVA foam, the Light Strike 2 on the bottom of this, really does add to the stability of the shoe. But what it also does is when I'm running slow, it feels a little bit clunky in the heel. When I pick up the pace and I'm a lot more on my toes, you can feel those energy rods. You can feel that you're really landing down on that Lightstrike Pro, and it feels amazing. It actually feels not that far off of the Adidas Adios Pro 3, which I love the ride of that shoe. So when you're picking up the pace, it feels really good. Now, a lot of the other reviews, and I'm going to be really curious, and I'm going to be able to report back on this when I do a full review on this shoe, they say that Lightstrike 2.0 does start to soften up after you get so many kilometers in it. So we're going to see over the next few runs whether it actually does, but I'll definitely report back on that. And I did find, and I did another video on this, I did find even with the Adios Pro 3 that was all Lightstrike Pro, it's a shoe, Adidas shoes, for whatever reason for me, more than any other brand, still are shoes that I tend to like to break in a little bit. They seem to feel a little bit better after they got 50 to 100 miles into the shoe. So not complaining about it, felt super snappy when I actually got up on the forefoot and was running a little bit faster, but it did feel a little bit clunky when I was running a little bit more midfoot, even heel striking a little bit when I was running really slow and starting to get a little bit tired and just cooling down and in recovery miles. Now, I did actually get the chance to run with somebody during a portion of that run who had also picked up the Boston 12 not that long ago. And the one thing that they mentioned, and one of the things that I'm concerned about with running through the winter in this shoe, is the EVA, that Lightstrike 2.0, again, gets a little bit stiff, and that the temperature really affects that. So that's something else I'm going to be able to report on once I get out there running a little bit more. Once the temperatures dip back down, we're having an oddly warm first start to this winter here in Canada. But I had the same problem with the Saucony Ride 15, was that after a while, once it got cold enough, this kind of turned into a little bit of a block. So that EVA foam doesn't do as well in the cold as something like a TPU or certainly a P-Bax. It seems to stiffen up a little bit more. So that's definitely something to watch. Now on the outsole of this shoe, it was dry conditions, but my experience with Continental rubber has been unbelievable in any of the shoes that I've run with. The wear and tear, obviously I've only got 25 kilometers on this, so I can't speak to that. I can just guess that it's going to be really good. And the grip, obviously it was a dry day and I didn't get a chance to run it in any rain, but again, if it's anything like any other Adidas shoes, and one of the main reasons why I bought this shoe, the outsole is going to do great. That Continental rubber always holds up well. So overall, loving the ride. The fit actually turned out pretty good for me. Maybe a little bit long in the toe box, but a really good lockdown. When I'm picking up the pace, it feels really nice, really bouncy. You got up into more of that Lightstrike Pro. And I have total confidence in the outsole of this shoe that's going to last many miles, and it's going to give me tons of grip through the winter. Guys, that is it. That is my first impression of the Adidas Boston 12. I am really excited to log so many more miles in this shoe and share with you once I have a little bit more of a long-term impression of how it actually works on so many different runs. I'm going to put it through its paces, and it might even mean that I'm shelving the Endorphin Speed 3 quite a bit more in the near future, but we'll probably do a little bit of a comparison between those shoes in the near future. My name is Matt. This has been What Matters to Matt, and ultimately, what matters to me most is my family. I'll see you guys in the next video.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be